It's unbelievable, even with all of the warnings, recalls, catastrophic failures, people still buy some of the hugest jokes on the car market. So let's get into it now. If you haven't been listening, if you've been having your head buried in the sand, I can't believe it, because these vehicles here have had nothing but issues, and issues big time. You know, I've been a Chevy fan all my life. You know, I grew up on the farm with Chevys and GMs. We love the trucks, we love the brand, but things have changed in the last few years. And beautiful trucks like this do bring audiences in. There's people still buying these vehicles. Here we have a Silverado by Chevy, and it's a ZR2. Of course, that being more of an off-road spec, you get big all-terrain rubber and protective gear. Look, even a step guards for the small in-laws. This vehicle is absolutely gorgeous, and that's why people are buying them. But it still blows my mind that GM and Chevy right now are struggling so badly with some of the recalls, some of the engine problems, and allegedly some of the lawsuits because of some of the engine issues. 8-speed, 10-speed automatic transmissions have all been big problems for GM in the last few years. Juddering, jerking, slipping, and kicking. Nothing short of sounding like you're at a rodeo. But you also have engine issues, and that's the big problem. I mean, we won't even talk about some of the flaky parts like door handles ripping off, and fit and finish of some of these parts don't necessarily seem to hold up all that well. Again, very functional truck. People are still buying them. You do get all the new technology, and you have great tow ratings in these vehicles, but it's unfortunate because there are serious engine transmission defects. But the 5.3 liter, we know that's been a problem for a while. Cylinder deactivation causing lots of problems. Broken rockers, lifters, huge issues there. Of course, carbon fouling with a lot of these vehicles with the 5.3, and generally a lot of engines that just aren't lasting. Early generations of 5.3s, remember the old 350 cubic inch back in the late 70s, early 80s? Absolutely bulletproof. They didn't have a lot of power, but they ran forever. You almost got sick of the truck and it rotted out way before that engine became a problem. But that's no longer an issue with the 5.3s, because chances are you're doing a bunch of banks of lifters and replacements of part of the heads or the whole heads, or maybe even the entire engine. I know somebody personally who just recently had to do an engine job, and it cost them about $15,000. So it's unfortunate the 5.3 and the carbon fouling and all the catastrophic failures are nothing new, and it's getting worse in my own personal opinion. As well, in some of the models with the 6.2, we know the 6.2 liter engine, it's naturally aspirated, and that's a big reason people buy them. I mean, I wanted to buy something naturally aspirated, and I've been struggling looking on the truck market, trying to find something without turbos, trying to find something V8 powered, but something that isn't plagued with problems. But the 6.2 is a significant problematic unit. Now GM and Chevy are allegedly saying, look, we need to put heavier oil because even a thinner grade of oil is causing problems, or making that connection that the lighter grade of oil is being somewhat problematic. Another big part of the issue is these engines are failing catastrophically. Improper finishing and polishing on the crank, and unfortunately it's wearing out rod bearings. Unfortunately, the bottom end of the engine of the 6.2s, the top end of the 5.3s, transmissions in between, means that Chevy and GM, ouch. Another manufacturer, I just don't understand why people continue to buy. And while I get a lot of viewers actually saying to me, you know what, I've got one with 180,000 miles and it's been great. Seems like a lot of the low miles ones, or if they've seen frequent oil services, they do okay for a while. But way too many problems with Hyundai and Kia products that are using the Theta 2 GDI engines. Of course, even the 2.4 specifically, a lot of those engines are found through the vast majority of the family. Forget about the fact that transmission issues or electric problems, those are the least of your concerns, because of course the intake cam phasers plug off. Because it is a GDI engine, it also carbons up, and it is strongly recommended to do walnut blasting to clean the intake of these vehicles in very short order, anywhere from 40, 50, 60,000 miles. If you don't do it in due time, you're likely to start running issues, because there is a set of intake runners that toggles through a set of valves, so you get better performance down low and a better turbulence, of course, to give you that torque, as well as better breathing at top. And these valves get stuck, they get hung up, and then it kicks out check engine lights. So carbon fouling with these direct injected engines, as well as a lot of transmission problems, stalling, misfires, talking about a lot of issues with the fuel systems in general and the oiling. And because it's direct injected, you're having a lot more carbon fouling. You're not able to cool the intake, and of course, as a result, those valves start to carbon up, because normally with a port fuel injection, you're able to get a lot of the carbon off the backs of the valves, and then the vehicle runs for many, many years. But that's an unfortunate reality with a lot of modern day vehicles that run only direct fuel injection. Just about every brand. BMW's been talking about it for years. Almost every manufacturer that runs exclusively direct fuel injection needs to have additional maintenance, anywhere from 40, 50, 60, 70,000 miles, to make sure all that carbon gets removed. The big part, of course, there's allegedly lawsuits, and the other big issue is, even with the extension of a warranty, an engine warranty that was added by Hyundai and Kia to get you to 10 years, to full replacement for that engine. Now, I know people personally that have had these warranties excluded because they didn't follow a set of rules, or they just missed the warranty period, or they hit that 120,000 kilometer range and all of a sudden they start developing this weird engine knock. And that is a common issue, because one of the big issues is, of course, poor oiling. Why? Because the oil control rings at the bottom start to clog up, of course, with heavy oil sludge. And of course, because it's direct fuel injected, that also causes a whole host and plethora of drivability issues. Everybody knows these engines start to burn oil, and now you start consuming over a quart per 1,000 miles. And that's just simply too much. You never did that when it was new, so why should it do it with 50,000 miles on it? But often they do. And that's a big problem with some of these Theta 2 engines, and specifically the 2.4s and a variety of many others. I've seen personally several of these burned roadside due to bad rod bearings. Now, allegedly, it looks like the rod bearings were too small, and if you neglected your maintenance and you didn't do maintenance enough, you know, ultimately doing walnut blasting and doing your oil services every 4,000 or 5,000 miles was probably your best defense about getting any kind of problems with those engines. But they're still not perfect, and the rod bearings were too small, a little neglect, a little overheating. Next thing you know, even with some of that metal particulate alleged to be part of the contributing factor on these vehicles, there's been nothing short of issues for vehicles for Hyundai and Kia carrying 32 engines that come from around that 2010, 2018, 19 timeframe. And it's a real adventure driving these ones with the expectation that you're going to get 100, 120,000 miles of it. Good luck. There's very few that go the distance. Some people say they can get it, but with all the warnings, with all the failures and all the problems that we've been hearing from Hyundai and Kia, it still blows my mind that anybody even buys these. And here's a brand that I just don't understand anymore, and it's Buick. Now, what we have here is an Encore, which is essentially the luxury version of what we see the Chevy Trax, the same vehicle. It almost looks like a clown car. I mean, if you look at the shape of it, it's super narrow. It looks like a clown car. These vehicles aren't particularly reliable. They look funny. They're not attractive. The engine specifically is an issue whereby it leaks oil, coolant. There's been lots of turbocharger failures with a lot of these vehicles. Unfortunately, they're also known to be particularly susceptible to fragility, to hard roads and damage. A lot of customers are noticing brakes that are wearing out way too soon. And you look at the small brakes, I know this is a small vehicle, but those are very, very small. Looks like the back brakes on my little pedal bicycle. So they're just clearly not enough. But a lot of customers complain as well about a lot of clunking and banging. It's just the overall vehicle is built very lightweight, and of course it's price point, so you're going to get what you pay for. And quite honestly, between the style, between the miscalculation on the demographic, because let's face it, Buick was traditionally a gray-haired brand, and now all of a sudden they're trying to appeal to the younger buyer. Most older buyers and mature buyers and gray hairs like me are not generally buying these types of vehicles. They'd much rather drive something that's a little bit more refined. You've spent your time, you've paid your dues. And it doesn't mean you have to spend the farm. It just means that I don't want to be seen in this thing. I know a couple people that have these vehicles. One of them has commented that they've had some drivability issues. There have been electric issues with these vehicles, and he's commented that he's had turbo problems with his as well. Now, unfortunately, that's just a reality in modern day engines with direct injection and turbocharging. There's going to be more expensive repairs coming up. But when these little 3-cylinder engines running really hard, and even small 4-cylinder engines teamed up with a big turbocharger that's almost physically the same size as the engine itself, you're going to have problems. But also, you're having more turbos in vehicles that people don't know how to drive turbos. Part of it's design, part of it's under engineering, but part of it's just people just don't understand. Either way, the understanding part is cool down, warm up, and a lot of people just drive them like they stole it, drive it like it's a naturally aspirated vehicle, and they don't, and then it fails. These just aren't built to last, and just with the way they look alone, what a joke. Now, when we talk about a joke, you can't go over a list like this without including a vehicle like that. Now, some people love them. It's sort of that redheaded stepchild. Some people love it. Other people love to hate it. Now, the unfortunate part is, yes, while Teslas do have a lower running cost, generally speaking, the tires, they wear out very quickly. They get very, very expensive. So do a lot of the other parts with these vehicles. For example, like these wiper blades are absolutely massive. Look at the length of that wiper blade that goes all the way down here. How about the fit and finish? Doesn't look all that well finished off, does it? But these vehicles, a lot of people love them and they buy them and they swear by them, but a lot of people have been trying to get rid of theirs as well, because resale on these vehicles is absolutely in the toilet. But more importantly than that, you have issues with electronics, glitches, of course, at center section as well. Unfortunate and unpredicted reboots from time to time. There was allegedly a story recently where a gentleman was in a collision. His Tesla Cybertruck unfortunately caught fire, and he could not escape the vehicle safely. Now that goes all over the internet, everybody's talking about it, whether that's fact or fiction. At this point, the complexity of these vehicles begs a lot of the questions. Do we have the right training? Do people even understand what they're driving? There's a lot going on underneath the skin, but with all the warnings, with all of the issues that we've been hearing and some of the problems, people still buy them. They're still all over. You see them all over the road. Some people love them and some people don't. Here's the next joke of a car. Now, normally I wouldn't say this because it clearly has a place. You know, I was in Europe many times over the years, and I've noticed these vehicles are very, very popular in Europe. And a lot of it is because the space constraints. A lot of places in Europe are very tight, the roads are narrow, and parking is very much at a premium. So having a small car like this just makes sense. So it made sense why Mercedes-Benz got on board with a vehicle like this. Here we have a little Pulse, and they got together with Swatch, and they created this nice little project. Now, they are cute, there's no doubt about it. You got steel wheels here, look at the beautiful headlights, fun little car. Of course, smart for two. We have these vehicles and they look great. They have these big doors, and once you're in the driver's seat, you actually feel almost like you're in a regular car, minus the fact that you really don't have any extra storage space. But the fact that manual gearbox or shiftable automatic, it's not necessarily the best. They say there's a lot of issues with moaning noises, gearboxes, coolant leaks, flex pipe, corrosion. There's a whole host of issues with a lot of these vehicles. They bob and weave. They sort of have an odd driving experience because they have such a short wheelbase. So when you hit bumps, they sort of bob and weave back and forth. Not to mention, you actually feel a bit like a clown driving these vehicles. So if I was driving one of these, I would definitely tint those windows over there. But see, that's not the biggest issue. The bigger issue is the fact that there is two engines. You can get a 0.9 or 1 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder gas engine, or you can get a 0.8 liter turbo diesel engine. And from where I stand, I remember when the diesel engine came out, that was the older models. You could get up to 85 miles per gallon on a tank of fuel. Okay, that makes sense. You take all the embarrassment and the clownness out of that, and you have a vehicle that makes sense. It's easy to park, it's extremely economical and frugal. But then they came along and they replaced the diesel, and they dropped in a 4-cylinder, a 1 liter thereabouts, 4-cylinder turbo engine. And the worst part is all they got was about 35 miles per gallon. So you went from an 85 to 35 miles per gallon. So where's the added benefit? Every car these days can get 30, 40 miles per gallon. Almost every SUV that's even mid-size, even like a Mazda 3, CX-50, anything these days can pretty much hit 30, 40 miles per gallon without even trying. And these vehicles this small, the compromise should be, of course, this size to get you that fuel economy, but you're not getting it. And so to me, this represents one of the biggest jokes in the automotive industry. It was cute at the time, it made sense, but the maintenance cost means it's very expensive. They do corrode, they do have problems, and they are expensive to look after. And with all of that said, another list of some more of the biggest losers in the car industry. Hope you take my word for it. You're definitely going to want to follow that if you want to avoid some big problems and big headaches. Hope to see each and every one of you in the next one, everybody. Have a wonderful day. See you then. Bye-bye.